Greetings and welcome to HillCrest Wine Club video tasting notes. And this is the last tasting actually of 2022 for our wine club release. It's been a little crazy here. I'm talking to you the very last day of October, and we've just finished bringing in our last grapes. Our entire harvest lasted about a week this year. We've never had anything quite like that. It was an intense week to say the least, and we have everything that's full. You might even hear in the background a little bit some of the Bodhi, the 400-gallon Italian oak ovals. We have the smaller ones. We have some Chenin Blanc and some other things fermenting in those right now, and I can hear them pop a little bit. So if you hear that, it's not the sound, it's actually fermentation. But an exciting year. We had a real cold spring, as many of you know, and that took the early varieties and kind of put them towards the back. So it'll be very exciting to see what comes out of this. I think it's going to be very kind of classic old-style Oregon. A little bit lower alcohol, more acidity, more perfume, elegance, which is a style we like, but it's very early in that game. But with that, I'd like to introduce the wines that we're going to be sending out. Over the years, I've done quite a few flights, and we've done quite a few video notes. This is the most exciting lineup and a special lineup. The most exciting I think we've ever done. We pulled a couple wines out of the library that we had a little bit of, and then we have a wine for the international selection. Really stunning wine from an area most people don't know this grape variety to be from. So anyway, with that, we're going to taste the Right Bank, which is a wine we sold out of many years ago. I have just a few cases left of this. It's the 2016, which is a wine that really opened my mind to the potential of Umpqua Valley once I was here. And then we're going to taste probably the wine that's gotten the most press of all wines that we do. We do not go out and release wines to wine writers and that, but occasionally one of them falls across one of our wines and we get a little bit of press on it. And the 2013 Malbec that is maybe the most stunning one I think we've made. And then we'll finish up, like I said, with a Pinot Noir from the Loire Valley that's very kind of like a hen's tooth kind of thing. So we'll get started. Right Bank, so when we first came up here, there was a vineyard just north of us, west of Sutherland, called Fox Hill. And it was a vineyard that had some Syrah and some Merlot, and I was not a Merlot fan in California at all. When I was at Mondavi, I couldn't figure out why we even made Merlot other than to blend a little bit with Cabernet Sauvignon. Part of being a great winemaker, or trying to be a great winemaker and understand fruit, is really listening. There's what you want to grow, and then there's what grows really well. And the first grape variety that I came up here and I had really low expectations of, and turned out to be one of the stunning varieties, is Merlot. And I think you see that here. There are quite a few people that grow it, and it's a variety that is very, very complete. A lot of places in the world, Merlot has like one fruit in the front end, maybe you'd say, but is very angular, kind of short, thin, and here it tends to be very complete. And many people are not aware of this, but the most expensive wines out of Bordeaux, France, are Merlot based. Historically, the most expensive was a wine called Chateau Petrus, which was about 95% Merlot, 5% Cab Franc, or sometimes 100% Merlot. So 2016 spectacular vintage, a warmer vintage, not a lot of shocks in terms of heat waves and that, but we brought this fruit in, fermented it in our concrete tanks. This has the 5% Cab Franc in there, and Cab Franc is something that people oftentimes think when you blend 1% of something, it changes the flavor 1%. Well, sometimes you can blend 1% of something and it changes the wine 50%, because it's not only that you're adding that percentage of flavor, but it sometimes changes the chemistry. And wines many times have lots and lots of different flavors, and it's almost like instruments in a symphony, that they're all there, but at different times, different groups play. And you can kind of alter who stands up and plays and who sits down. Many of the great Cabernets of Napa Valley always have Cab Franc in them, 1, 2, 3%. Bordeaux, a lot of the great Bordeaux is the same thing, and that's something that adds complexity, adds longevity, and this wine has that. But this is the one I've been kind of drinking off of here and there, tasting, and this wine is drinking spectacularly well. And I think that's the case as we go into the holidays with the 2016 Right Bank, which plays honor to the east side of Bordeaux, Saint-Emilion, Pomerol regions, and the Malbec. These wines are really, really beautiful wines to present for the holidays. So with that little run. This cassis fruit, so a lot of the fruit in the New World is kind of either really, really sweet or kind of stewed prunes. This has what the French call cassis, which is this, not blackberry, but it's this really kind of sweet, dark black fruit, but very, very kind of fresh character, with a little bit of sous bois, which is turning the log over in the forest, this kind of sweet undergrowth that the wine has. But very round, rich, has a little bit of structure, but the beautiful thing about wines like this is the point at which I love to drink the wines. The wine has still some of the fruit in its youth, but the other side of it is integrated, it's kind of softened. The edges are kind of rounded, and a lot these wines saw anywhere from like 3 to 3.5 years in barrel, so they had that time in barrel, but the bottles only accentuated that even more. But beautiful acidity. That's one of the nice things about Merlot here. You tend to carry nice acid, and with a lot of the other grapes in that as well. So really spectacular. I'm still tasting it, on and on and on. That's the sign of grapefruit. Next wine, Malbec. So when we first came up here, Richard had planted 35 varieties out of Napa Valley, and he had the Pinot Noir and Riesling and Cabernet Sauvignon in substantial amounts. Then he had rows of these other grape varieties, and one of those was Malbec, Malbec is what made Bordeaux famous. So before the disease phylloxera in Bordeaux in the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s, everything was Malbec based, with either Cabernet Franc or Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon blended. At the replanting, or during the replanting, Merlot became the dominant variety, and then Cabernet second to that. Merlot got washed out a little bit because it wasn't as disease resistant and not as high yielding. But the kings of France used to drink the wines of Cahors, France, southwestern France, Malbec based. So I asked Richard, of those 32 other varieties that he planted, if he had to plant 2 or 3 of those again, what would they be? Because over the years he'd made small batches of wine. He always told me Malbec, Malbec, and Malbec. And I thought, oh, that's fantastic. That kind of doesn't make any sense. There really wasn't a lot of Malbec grown on the West Coast other than for blending. And this is around 99, 2000. Well, Malbec is a variety we love. We'd grown some in Napa Valley as a blender, and that came up here, began playing with it. I'm a believer. We do more Malbec than anyone else in Umpqua Valley. And it's something we've doubled down on in terms of vineyard plantings, and that's we'll have more and more of that, start doing some different styles as well. But the style of Malbec that this valley produces is Argentina makes very kind of soft, very sweet, perfumey. The Cahors region of France, which is kind of the benchmark, and that's kind of on the northeast side of the Pyrenees, right up close to it, what's called hill country. The wines are very earthy, very structured, but not as generous. And we tend to bridge those two. We get the structure and that, but we also get this fruitiness that you see in North Coast California, and you see it on the west coast here of Oregon. The coastal areas, you get this fat fruit, the spicy character, but this density, but it has this velvety roundness to it. And over the last 5 years, we've had several people that are very significant kind of light up at this wine. One of those, when the shutdown took place, the Oregon Wine Board decided they were going to do some Zoom tastings, and they did a tasting of international wine writers and national wine writers. There were about 200 of them, and they selected 6 wines from throughout Oregon. This was that wine that was selected by the master of wine that represents the Oregon Wine Board. And the wines were broken down into 187 small format bottles and sent, and we did a Zoom tasting in February of 21, I think it was. And anyway, in this tasting, this wine was really, really recognized for how unique and how beautiful and how distinctive it is from Southern Oregon. And I really believe Malbec has a great future. If you look at pricing of grapes right now in Southern Oregon, both the Rogue Valley, Umpqua Valley, the most expensive wine or fruit is actually Malbec. But this is the first wine also that we age for 5 years in barrel and in cellar. And by that I mean in barrel and then time in tank and then in bottle prior to release. And so this wine has 5 years on it, and based on what this wine, how it ended up expressing itself, is the reason we brought in those Boti, those larger oak ovals, the 1,300 gallon and the 400 gallon I talked about earlier, as a way of aging wines for a longer time. But this is a wine I still have. We have visitors come down that are in the wine press. Oftentimes they'll request, hey, can we taste this wine? This is the last of what I have, but I want to share this with you, because wines like this, it's one thing to drink them all the time. It's another thing to really kind of share. And people that really love wine, it's like if you love food, you like to make something, give it to people and see them kind of light up. Same thing is true in winemaking. We love to present something to somebody maybe that they didn't expect that's super beautiful, and so we want to share these last few bottles that we have with you. Um, so this wine has this beautiful, the first thing hits me is kind of like a cedary component, almost like a cigar box character to it. And of fruit, nice acidity. I kind of salivate in anticipation of tasting it. There's almost like a little bit of a juniper with this kind of, once again, this cassis fruit, where the right bank is kind of sweeter fruit in that. This is kind of more bright, focused black fruit. A little bit of a spice, like a sweet spice, almost like a cardamom or something, but very, very faint. The architecture of these wines is very different. Where the Merlot is very kind of soft and round and kind of filling, and that this wine is more like water going through a gourd, just a little bit tighter, but I get this great weight, and I get this structure. So Malbec is very famous for aging a long time. And I still get this, it's a very persistent but very gentle acidity, which is great for aging. It's also great for the wine going with food. And a little bit more structure, very, very fine tannins. But once again, very persistent. One of the ways to tell high quality fruit, and I've talked about this before, from well-made wines, it wasn't such interesting fruit, is all wines, when you first taste them, you get the sweetness of fruit, but a lot of wines either fall off or you get something that's very tannic and dry or very oaky. Great fruit, great quality fruit, you start off with that fruitiness and very slowly it kind of feathers off either away, in the case of like a Barbera where there's no oak or tannin, or in a deeper red wine with oak and tannin where it kind of feathers off that way. Once again, super, super persistent. So I hope you really enjoy these wines. These are great wines to share at the table with family and friends, and enjoy them for what they are. They're drinking perfectly well right now. So to finish up with, I love the Loire Valley. It's one of the great secrets of fine wine today in the world that's west of Paris. So Pinot Noir we know and Chardonnay are best known in Burgundy, France, which is east of Paris, in the center of France. The true center of France, which is just west of Paris, is the beginning of the Loire, kind of the upper parts of the Loire. Best known for Sancerre and Puy-Fumé, which are two Sauvignon Blanc-based growing regions, most famous regions in the world, and famous for a very particular type of soil called Kimmeridgian and also Portlandian limestone, which give the wines a very, very unusual acid profile and flavor. There's a little bit of red grown. It's the permitted red in Sancerre is Pinot Noir. Very little of it leaves the country. It's something that's consumed in country. I've enjoyed many of these over the years in France and occasionally see a bottle here and there. Ran across this wine. It's a family that produces mostly white wine, a little bit of the Pinot Noir, but this is a wine that is fermented in a standard way we think for Pinot Noir, but also aged in stainless, or what they say cuve, which can be a concrete vat instead of barrel, or in a stainless steel tank. This wine has super, super expressive black fruit, like berry, and it's almost, it's a raspberry kind of cherry smell, so a little bit more kind of red notes to it, but just comes up out of the glass. And then you pick up a little bit of what I say like a root character, and root can be, in some wines like Syrah can be like beets kind of thing. Other places it's almost celery, and this is almost like celery, a little stem, which I don't know, but this wine probably has some stem retention or whole cluster. When I go to smell it about here, I can actually pick up the perfume of this wine. But this wine has beautiful, beautiful acidity. And so this is a super classic. If I tasted this wine blind, I'd probably guess it's from France, but there's no way I'd guess it's from the Loire. It tastes like Burgundy, and Burgundy that's drinkable is very expensive. Great Burgundy, they're the most expensive wines in the world. Some of them at release running $20,000 and $25,000 a bottle, and the cheap wine from that winery being $2,000 a bottle upon release. A lot of it's $300, $600, $800 a bottle. This wine is just super spectacular. Actually, you'll see this bottle's unopened. We drank the test bottle I tasted last night with dinner, so anyway. Super round, generous, nice. Once again, nice. I talked about that kind of maybe a little stemmy character. I picked that up in the mouth. That's something that kind of gives you a little more structure, backbone, a little more weight, especially with food. Lip smacking good. I mean, I'm just sit there. I like acidity. The more wine you drink, the more you like acid. And so part of that is you take wine to the table, but it's also like lemonade on a hot day. You want to keep kind of reaching for it. So very, very beautiful. The white that we're going to send out, I did not grab a bottle of, but that's the Bianco, and it's the last of our Bianco. The 11.5% alcohol Pinot Blanc. that's spectacular, and that's going to open the way for a Gamay Rosé that we will release here pretty soon. So with that, I want to say thank you. I'm also going to do a separate video. We're getting ready to release the Thanksgiving special, and on the back end of this, we'll have a separate video for that. So I want to say thank you for allowing our family to live its dreams, and we're hoping to a great end of the new year, and cheers to you and the genie in the bottle. Thank you.